Everyone has experienced a moment like this. A careless word, a dismissive tone, a look that quietly says you don't matter. Many people ignore these moments. They tell themselves it isn't worth the trouble. They say it's better to stay calm, better to avoid conflict, better to pretend nothing happened. But there's a quiet danger in ignoring disrespect. When someone learns they can treat you without respect, they rarely stop. They learn something else. They learn that nothing will happen if they keep going. This is an old story about a farm where the animals believed one gentle creature would tolerate anything until someone showed him something he'd never understood before. On a wide farm surrounded by fields lived a tall draft horse named Blaze. He pulled the farmer's plow every spring, carried heavy carts of grain in autumn, and stood patiently in the barn through long winter nights. He was strong enough to move almost anything on the farm. But Blaze was known for something else. He was quiet. When the goats pushed past him in the barn doorway, he stepped aside. When the pigs stole hay from his feeding pile, he simply moved to another corner. When the younger horses nudged him away from the water trough, he waited for his turn. Most animals believed this meant Blaze was kind, and he was. But kindness without boundaries can become something else. It can become permission. Near the barn lived a loud peacock named Duke, who believed the farm belonged to him. Every morning, he shouted from the fence posts, chased chickens across the yard, and strutted around as if he ran the place. One day, Duke hopped onto Blaze's feed bucket and scattered grain across the dirt. "Too slow again," the peacock laughed. Blaze lowered his head and quietly ate what remained. Duke watched closely, waiting to see if anything would stop him. Nothing did. The next day, Duke came back and kicked straw into Blaze's water bucket. Again, Blaze ignored him. Soon it became a habit. Sometimes Duke pecked at his legs. Sometimes he crowed loudly right next to his ear just to startle him. Each time, Blaze stayed silent. He told himself it was easier that way. But the farm was watching. And animals learn quickly, especially when the lesson repeats every day. The pigs started pushing into his stall. The goats climbed onto the hay he'd gathered. Even a young donkey shoved him aside at the trough once. Blaze endured it all. Slowly, the farm learned something. The biggest animal there would never resist. The largest animal in the barn would never respond. One afternoon, a new horse arrived. She was older, with dark fur and steady eyes. The farmer called her Flint. Flint had worked on many farms before, and she noticed things quickly. On her first evening in the barn, she watched Duke hop onto Blaze's feeding pile again, kick grain into the straw, and laugh as Blaze quietly gathered what he could. Flint said nothing. She just watched. The next morning, the same thing happened. Duke strutted into Blaze's stall and scattered his feed again. This time, Flint stepped forward. "Why do you allow that?" she asked. Blaze looked up. "It doesn't matter," he said calmly. "It's only grain." Flint shook her head. "It's not the grain." Blaze frowned. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, Flint walked to the center of the barn, where the animals gathered around the feeding bins. She picked up a heavy wooden bucket with her teeth and dropped it loudly in front of the peacock. The noise startled Duke, who flapped backward. "Move it," Flint said. Duke blinked. "What?" "The bucket," she repeated. Duke pecked at it. It didn't move. He pushed harder. Still nothing. Finally, he stepped back, annoyed. "I can't move it," he snapped. Flint nodded. "Of course not." Then she turned and nudged the bucket lightly with her shoulder. It rolled easily across the barn floor. The animals watched. Something simple had just become clear to them. Flint looked back at Duke. "You didn't kick this bucket," she said calmly, "because you knew it wouldn't move." The barn fell silent. Even the pigs and goats stopped moving for a moment. Then she turned toward Blaze. "And that's why he kicks your grain." The meaning settled slowly over the animals. Blaze stood still. Duke shifted uncomfortably. "Disrespect grows where nothing pushes back," Flint continued, her voice calm. "But the moment something stops moving, everything changes." That afternoon, Duke returned to Blaze's stall, hopping toward the grain bucket with the same careless grin. But this time, Blaze didn't step aside. He simply stood over his feed. When Duke kicked forward, his claw struck Blaze's hoof instead. The peacock stumbled backward. Blaze lowered his head slightly, not in anger, just enough to show the space was no longer open. "I eat first," he said quietly. Duke hesitated, then stepped away. No fight happened. No shouting filled the barn. But every animal watching understood what had changed. The quiet horse was no longer the easiest place to push. In the days that followed, something new appeared in the barn. The pigs stopped stealing Blaze's hay. The goats stopped climbing onto his stall. The donkey waited for his turn at the trough. Blaze hadn't become cruel. He hadn't become loud. He had simply stopped teaching the farm that he would accept anything. And that small change was enough. Many people believe ignoring disrespect keeps life peaceful, but silence can quietly invite more of what you wish would stop. When someone learns they can treat you without respect, they often repeat it, not always because they're cruel, but because nothing has shown them otherwise. Respect begins the moment you stop allowing yourself to be treated like something that can be pushed aside. Kindness is not weakness, but kindness without boundaries rarely earns respect. Once you understand that, the world around you begins to change, not because you became harder or colder, but because you finally showed that your dignity isn't something anyone can simply push aside. Sometimes all it takes is standing still, just once, to show others who you truly are. If this story made you think about your own life, pause for a moment and ask yourself, where have you been stepping aside when you should simply stand?
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying my videos and want to see more, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means a lot and helps me keep creating great content for you.